If you don't like boring news but still crave the truth, then dive into The Robert and Crew Show. From mind-bending conspiracy theories to wild weather phenomena, we've got it all. Ever wondered what's really happening in your hometown, or what secrets the global news isn't telling you? We dig deep into the core of every story, unraveling the mysteries one podcast at a time. Join Robert and the crew as we navigate this vibrant, ever-changing cyberpunk landscape, bringing you interviews with the most intriguing minds out there. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, a news junkie or a weather enthusiast, there's something here for you. So strap in, listeners, because we're about to take you on a ride through the neon-lit alleys of truth and intrigue. This is the Robert and Crew Show, where the future meets the fantastic.
Welcome back to the Robert and Crew Show. How is everybody doing tonight? How are you doing tonight, crew? Hey, Julie, I see you. You're online. You're supposed to be in tonight's episode, Julie.
Join. I sent you a message to join us because you're part of this series.
Yeah, we see you slack-a-lacking, trying not to be a pod but watch.
But yeah, Julie, you have the link, so join in. But this is the Terra Infinita, Part 4.
Terra Infinita.
And we are on Chapter 6 of the second book. And we will do also Chapter 7.
Chapter 7. And where did we leave off?
Chapter 6, The Lands of Draco.
Right, but what happened in the last episode?
Okay, so we talked about the Phoenicians, which is Venus, and we also talked about the Anunnaki.
Yeah, the lands of the Anunnaki.
Yep.
Okay. So we talked about the Venetians, we talked about the lands of the Anunnaki, and now we're going on to the lands of Draco.
Yep. If you could please, good sir, pull up the Lands of Draco map.
Yeah, let me see if I have it, good sir.
As everybody can tell, I'm actually in a really good mood today because when it comes to the Terra Infinita, I'm always in a great mood for this. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about.
That's Brahma. Lands of Vega. Oh, look who decided to pop in.
Hello, Julie.
Hey, Julie,
sorry,
how
I
are
didn't
you?
see your message.
You're good.
I'm good. I just
We thought you were asleep.
We thought you were asleep.
No, but I probably would be soon.
So I don't know if I have it. I might have to go get it from the interwebs. I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go get it from the interwebs. Give me a second.
So, what's this one called?
This is Terra Infinita Part 4.
No, I mean the chapter. I know that, but
The Lands of Draco.
Okay, Draco.
And then we're going to also do Chapter 7, which is the Lands of Mars.
We'll have to find out if Mars is connected to space or actual land.
Well, in the Terra Infinita series, whatever you see above the dome, planet-wise, is a reflection from the Great Dome from where the lands are. So it looks like stars.
Yeah.
So what looks like stars?
Okay, so all right, so you know how when you look
talking
at
about
the
the dome,
sky,
the dome
when you
world
look
looks like stars?
Yeah, so when you look up in the sky and see the Great Dome, right? And you see all those white
Yeah.
lights, those are reflections of each dome. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you see here the lands of Draco, that red ring around Itamen, Isithbin, you have is a ring of fire. In there, you have one sun, and then outside you have another sun with two, looks like, miniature rings. And then you have an ice dome around it. So you have an ice wall. But outside of that, on the left of that ocean, and you see that gray rocky formation right there. Above that is called the Abyssal Ocean. And then right under that rocky formation right there is a land called Osiris and Deathland. And then next to Osiris, you got Isis, and then you have the lands of Orion. And inside lands of Orion, there's a few other lands which I can't read. They're pretty small, but they are white and purple. But I'm gonna go ahead and start off this chapter real quick. Let's see here. The Draco, are also known as Etemans, are the inhabitants of the Draco lands, northwest of the known lands, crossing the lands of Venus. These beings that once visited our lands are known for their great technological advance in weapons for attack and defense, as well as great psychic development. Some of these beings can communicate telepathically, using this technique to subdue any colonizing enemy or even to colonize other lands. The Etemans, by means of a treaty, achieved a union with the custodians, but at the beginning, this was not so. But the custodians attacked their lands when they were not in their most advanced stage. But on the contrary, the Draco lands lack islands, but two large continents are found with great vegetation. In fact, the most exotic plants any other circle environment within the Great Dome exists there. Its Great Wall of ice was never an impediment to be able to cross other domes and conquer some lands. These walls were left by the custodians when they decided to put an end to the total manipulation of their environment. Did they not stop manipulating them? We really wonder. We think not.
Hey, Judy.
Hello, JD.
She says, hey, everyone, I just got all caught up. Glad crew's having a good day/night.
Thank you, JD. I appreciate that. And by the way, JD, I do thank you for sending me that song. I listened to it. It was really great. Okay, here's where I was at. Okay. They started by lands outside the domes, like their nearby land Osiris. But then they moved their technology to the islands of Anubis. Many of these beings stayed in these paradise islands, but they used there many of the military bases for weapons development. What happened in the ancient battle between Etzmans and Custodians? The Custodians finally won at the beginning, since the Etzmans, as were mentioned, had not achieved the progress they have today. But it was not easy, nor did they surrender. Since they knew their lands were well and are experts in making large tunnels, the Custodians had to use advanced technology to finally achieve victory in those lands and leave their mark on the walls of ice, surrendering the dome in that circle environment. The Draco lands were also visited by other races such as the Anunnaki and the inhabitants of other nearby lands, such as the famous Greys that inhabited the Orion lands. The
JD
links
says
with
awesome, by the way.
The links with these beings led to the fact that today both races live together in a true fraternity, both in Draco and Orion. The X-Men and Greys can be found together. The age at which these beings can reach is approximately 192 years compared to the years of the known lands. While the custodians infected their atmosphere and the air they breathe at the time of their attack, as of today, they have no diseases, nor any great war being waged, although they are spiteful beings, and it would not be strange if they are planning to colonize other lands or perhaps a revenge towards the custodians. But this is all mere speculation. A great flood that still disconcerts its inhabitants was generated at the beginning. A strange wall surrounding its coast.
That sounds familiar.
It does.
It's
And that
it is
happened in the lands of Draco?
mhm. It is technology that they were not carrying out. It is said that it used as radar and that it could attack any enemy that wanted to cross them. The surveillance system of their lands increased in the last time, product of the fear that the great colonizers still have for what could be outside this great dome. It is possible that the custodians and the Anunnaki are very interested in this type of wall to replace the ice walls they create. That was chapter 6.
So there's some crazy similarities there to some of our stories. Like a great flood. Like that sounds like some Noah-esque stuff there. Sounds like a great reset happened.
Mhm.
And then I also thought it was pretty cool that there's a whole island, a whole bunch of islands just called the islands of Anubis. That's awesome.
And then chapter 7, which is Planet of Mars. So if you could please, good sir, pull up the picture of the lands Mars.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna have it in just a second.
Give me a moment, bro. I gotta get me something to wipe myself down because freaking my soda got all over me for a second. So I'll be right back.
All right. Well, when you come back, I have it up.
All right, thank you.
Some of these maps, Julie, are so hard to find.
I bet.
Like finding them like close up like photos of them because like there's one giant map that is all like there's this one giant map which I have at the very beginning here, I believe. Or maybe I don't have it on here. I thought I had it on here. Oh yeah, right here. There's this map and like you can't zoom into it or nothing. So it the second you try to zoom into it, you don't get what you want from it. It's kind of terrible actually. I like the map, but I think this one's terrible when you're trying to see things on it.
I bet.
I'm back.
So I'm glad that I could get some cool maps like this one. Oh, you back?
Yeah. Okay. So as you see
We got
on the
two
lands of
comments.
Mars,
They're
on
possibly
the
pretty interesting.
that's a little
Mars
crooked
time.
compared to my map.
Okay, so JD says Mars time. I'm definitely interested in this one.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite ones as well. All right.
It's where Elon's trying to go.
Yeah. Okay. As you see on this map, on that map compared to my map, on the on the top left is the known lands. Okay. And
Okay.
on the bottom right, you have a land called Shangri-La.
Shangri-La.
Mhm. And
That's
then
like a boot, or what is that? Is that a Buddhist thing?
I
Shangri-La,
don't know.
or what is
I
that?
don't know. I
I've
have
heard
no
that
clue.
before.
And then on the top right is the lands of Set.
Yeah, like Anubis's son,
Uh-huh. And then
Set.
in the lands of Mars Iceball, you have what is called Area Adrita, the human colony, Terra Summerina, and then Mar Summerum is what I guess that ocean is called, I guess. Then there's a small island right there. I can't see what it's called, right in between human colony and area. Then you got
The human
he
colony area.
yeah, I can't see what that if I let's see if I can. Oh yeah, I'm not gonna be able to read that. It's even when I try to zoom in, it
Is
won't let me read it.
the inner climate? Oh no. Well, it just says the inner climate range, but the island right in the middle, I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, I'm talking about that little island right there. That's in like 3 parts.
Yeah, I can't I can't see it on this map. And I even zoomed into it. It doesn't have a name on this map, or if it does, the name is so small that I can't even see it.
Right. Okay. So right by Eridania, you have Thele 1 and Thele 2. Then on the circle, that the black circle is there's Mar something. And then you got Elysium. And then right under Eridania is a small island which I cannot read either.
That island I might be able to read on this map. Maybe.
And then right by Lands of Mars and Shangri-La, and then whatever this other ice dome is, which looks like I think is the Land of Angels on the bottom right
I
of
can't
my
read that
map,
one either.
is the
You
Abyssal
said
Ocean.
Land of the Angels?
I think is the Land of Angels. So right by Shangri-La and the Lands of Angels and Lands of Mars, and ours is the Abyssal Ocean. And in go back to the Lands of Mars map real quick.
Yeah.
So you can't see it, but see that dark rocky formation by the tan one on the top left?
Yeah. Yep.
Right in there is the Lands of Mana. Or the Sea of Mana. And then whatever lands in there. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and start on this chapter real quick. Lands of Mars. The inhabitants or inhabited these lands that lie behind the walls of ice and the mountain walls. There lies this great world crossing the second dome and traversing lands that few humans have ever seen. Mars has great incidence in the known lands, since in those lands several events related to humanity happened and still happen today. This immense circle environment and misnamed red planet harbored a great and diverse life within the dome. This native Martian civilization was reportedly totally annihilated by the colonizers. So, why wasn't part of it left for possible further development, or even for some kind of manipulation by the colonizers themselves? Apparently, this race was firm in their convictions based on their morals and ethics, preferring to die and extinguish their race in battle rather than beg for freedoms and quotas under conditions that colonization would impose. The Anunnaki, at the end of their mission, realized that not a single Martian was left standing, since the last ones even committed suicide. They were surprised, since they did not expect this to happen. In fact, it was their first colonization, and after this, they took precautions. The original Martian race was known in later studies was an advanced race in technology that prioritized the spiritual growth and welfare of their community. They had little military training and technology. Their defense was almost nil. The custodians soon took the great lands and grouped in the great centers, taking advantage of all the knowledge and progress that was left there. Nowadays, the lands of Mars are simply experimental lands, where several races coexist and generate wars between them, and different weapons for almost eternal conflicts. The leaders of these lands are both Anunnaki and custodians. There is a community of humans mostly made up of people who belong to small groups and earn their passage only by their hard work and betraying their own race and their homelands. The best known members, who might even be living in the human colony of the last humans, I am referring to the last reset, would be well known explorer Rare Admiral Richard Byrd, who knew how to be on the other side for a long time and to confess some truth before giving himself up completely. Some of the many stories that we have not or have out there and that are written today to keep the truth away from the Terra Infinita and the civilizations that live behind, let's see here, and the ice barriers and the domes that separate them. In the lands of Mars also coexist the famous Greys and some minor draconian colony, or also known as Etriments. Between the Greys, the human colony, there is a rivalry existing since almost the beginning of the transportation of the custodians to the humans there. The custodians and the Anunnaki monitor everything very well and do not miss any detail of them. What had begun in the clone lands today takes place in these lands. Possibly this transfer is due to the time difference that exists in the environment. Their time, as in many other circle environments or lands within different domes, is different from the lands of Mars. For this reason, the passage to Mars of humans is always welcome despite the dangers involved, since it is a one-way ticket to a long life of almost 500 years in comparison. There are also other races almost all moved by the custodians and their frantic conquests of their 178 circles or worlds. And
Sorry,
many
guys. I was switching maps. I was trying to find if I had the map of the land of the land of the clones. You just talked about how it was different between the land of Mars.
right,
So I was like, do I have a map of the land of the clones? But anyways, the land of the clones looks just like Earth. Just it's a little bit different.
right.
But anyways, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're good. And many other races originating from different sectors were also moved there. And the lands of Mars are considered as in a large zoo where different behaviors, confrontations, and conflicts resolution are studied. A
Wait,
huge
did they call
farm,
it a zoo?
yeah,
Oh my god, that's insane. So it's just like they have the multitude of because they have the three different races on there. Like the custodians are studying those races and treating those beings like they live in a zoo.
yeah.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
so not only were different behaviors, confrontations, and conflicts resolution are studied, a huge farm of exhaustive monitoring and analysis of races. That's chapter 7.
So that's like a giant concentration camp
Yeah.
of like different races that they're studying.
Yep.
Sound familiar?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds familiar to me. Freaking, that's eugenics. That's like Nazi eugenics.
So part 5. All right. I'm going to tell you what part 7, what part 5, which chapters we're going to read, what chapters I'm going to read.
Okay.
So when we do part 5 in season 5, I'm going to read two or three chapters. So we just finished the lands of Draco and the lands of Mars. The next lands we're going to be reading about for chapter 7. All right, no, chapter 8, lands of Neptune for part
Okay.
5. We're also going to read about the lands of Uranus for chapter 9, and maybe chapter 10, which is the lands
Hey,
of Jupiter.
hey crew, I think it's pronounced Uranus.
Uranus?
Yeah, it's Uranus. You called it
Uranus?
Uranus.
That's how I always was told it was
No,
pronounced,
I
but
know. That's how
Uranus.
most people call it. That's what most people call it, but I always think it's hilarious because if you read the actual Greek pronunciation, it's Uranus.
It reminds
And
me of me.
yeah, but I'm just fucking with you, bro.
I know
Like
you are.
I think it's funny.
It
Yeah.
reminded me of E.T. where they're in the kitchen table and he says that to his brother. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's why it made me laugh. But
So
hey,
yes, go ahead, Julie.
I was thinking about when y'all were talking about
Shangri-La.
It's
Shangri-La,
Shangri-La.
that isn't that it reminds me of something like in China or Japan
Yeah, that's why I was thinking that like maybe it was like Buddhist monks. Like is
because
that let me look that up real quick. I can figure this one out real quick.
okay, because I was thinking also of the movie The Mummy when they went to Shangri-La and
I
it just
didn't know they went to Shangri-La in the Mummy.
in part 3.
Oh, in part 3?
But
Yeah.
to find out that Mars is a big zoo slash farm, I don't want to go there now.
So
Yeah, and especially
is
if there's concentration camps. Sorry, go ahead.
Shangri-La is a paradise, a utopia, a synonym for a remote idyllic haven. It's a place of tranquility and beauty, often associated with a hidden or remote location. Shangri-La has become a symbol of a remote, hidden paradise, a place of idyllic beauty and tranquility. It can be used to describe a place that's considered heaven or a sanctuary. Um, it is it's big in Tibetan Buddhism. So I was right. It's Buddhist, but it's Tibetan
Okay.
Buddhism. Yeah, that's where Shangri-La comes from, and it's supposed to be like a super heavenly place to go to.
Okay.
But yeah, Robert, I want to go back to chapter uh 6 real quick with you on
Yeah,
the Lands of Draco. What's your thought? I want your thoughts on that one.
of the lands of Draco. Okay, so let me pull up
Yeah.
the map real quick. The map is right here. So everybody see that like that false red border or whatever. It might be like it might be a computer border, a firewall or something, and then you have the
So
ice wall.
so
Like
it's
I'm just
considered a firewall, a
yeah, a
fire.
firewall. But you see the firewall, and then you see the ice wall surrounding the whole lands of Draco. What does that look like? It looks like a lizard eye,
Yeah.
and that's where the lizards live
Yep.
in the lands of Draco. So, in my opinion, like they said at the beginning of this that the people in the lands of Draco actually looked like humans at first until the custodians interbred with them, and then they created these creatures with scaly skin, and they became the reptilians or the reptoids. So with the
Or
lands of
also
Draco,
like vampires.
yeah. So with the lands of Draco, I think it's really crazy that that's possibly where all of the reptilians came from.
Right. Now, let's go back to Lands of Mars real quick. So we just found out that it's a huge uh zoo slash farm, and Anunnaki and the custodians are monitoring a bunch of different races: the Greys, the Draconians, the humans, and possibly other races. That's scary. I don't
So
even want to go there.
so the Greys go. So the Greys are from Mars.
No, They're from
Where-
Orion. The
The
lands of
Great
Orion.
Orion?
Yeah.
Then how come we're told in the world right now that they come from Andromeda?
I don't know.
Like, because if they came from Orion, like I guess NASA wouldn't tell us anyways, but the people always speculate that the Greys come from Andromeda, from the Andromeda galaxy.
Well,
And we do have a dome plane that's named Andromeda.
so I'm going to quote a game series real quick, which, Robert, you know the game series very well. Mass Effect.
Yeah,
Now, in the first 3 Mass Effect games, no Greys are even seen or even mentioned.
hmm
Now, Mass Effect Andromeda, when that came out, which I have on my PlayStation where I can play it anytime, I could re-download it and play it. No Greys are seen or mentioned in Andromeda.
right.
So that tells me that Greys are not from Andromeda or even mentioned.
Right.
A different races, which I can't remember what the race is called. So when we do finally get to the lands of Andromeda in the book, we'll know
Yeah.
what is actually there.
In the book, does it go over every 178 domes? Does it go over all of them, or does it just go over the ones that they
I
know?
think it goes over. I think it will go over all of them. I'm not fully for sure. Now, the first book is about William Morris.
Right.
This book that
Is his daughter.
I'm reading, is about Helen Morris telling us about the different lands.
Yeah, his daughter.
His daughter. Yeah. Now the third book I think is from the giant who knows Helen Morris or Willie Morris. I don't remember. I'm gonna have to look for the first book, and if I do find the first book, I will occasionally read. I
Do
will.
you have
We could do a
Audible?
series on the first book,
Do you have
and
Audible?
then a series on what?
Do you have Audible?
No, but I'm gonna have to re-download it. I used to back in the day. When I had Audible, I would use it for the Game of Thrones series.
They have all of the entire Terra Infinita on Audible.
Okay.
I
Is
just
it
checked.
free?
It's not free. It costs 1 credit.
Hmm. I might. I don't know, but I'm gonna have to use. If I do get Audible, I'm gonna use it for the first book and the third book. But we might even do. We might after this series, the Terra Infinita series, we might switch up to William Morris's story and then the third book. So who knows? But
Is
I'm
the first book is the navigator who crossed the ice walls, right?
yeah, that's about William Morris.
Yeah, so it's $10 on Audible.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they also have the second one, which is the navigator who crossed the ice walls too. And then they have a couple different ones that there's a whole bunch of books that are actually about this subject. They do not have all of the Terra Infinita books, but they have quite a few of them.
Oh, so there's more than 3 books.
Yeah, well there's books that other people wrote. And then there's books that Claudia Nocelli wrote after Terra Infinita that are there's more to it.
So
But
there's spin-offs within spin-offs within spin-offs.
Yeah, but so Terra Infinita extraterrestrial worlds and their civilizations is also by Claudia Nocelli. And that's one that I've never even heard of. Terra Infinita extraterrestrial worlds and their civilizations. I've never heard of that book.
I think that's
So
the one I'm reading from.
is it?
Yeah, but I got the laptop put up, so I don't want to have to reopen it, and
No, I got you. And then there's a whole bunch. There's a whole bunch in Spanish.
Wow.
Like there's like so some Spanish art author has been doing their own stories on Terra Infinita. It's a pretty big subject.
Well, here's the thing: if more people can add on to it of their knowledge of the subject, it makes the story even better. Because here's the thing: there's a lot of stuff that we're not told,
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
and
How
their
how many
knowledge.
humans do you think? How many humans do you think have actually made it across and been to these other lands if they exist? Do you think it's like a couple hundred? Do you think it's only like two or three? Do you think it's more than 1,000?
I don't know. We don't know. It's all speculation. It's all legend. Until we
Yeah.
know the whole truth, we can only speculate and wonder.
True.
I
It's a myth, it's
wonder
a
how many
legend,
people though
it's a
have made it
theory.
through.
It's a theory. It's a horrible. It's a horrible conspiracy,
Yeah, it hurts
as
people.
Robert likes to put it.
It's a horrible conspiracy theory that hurts people.
Exactly.
No, that's what I always say because if you call it that, YouTube won't ban it.
Right.
They'll be like, "Oh, he's just talking about a theory and he's saying it's true." But honestly, this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is just a book.
Okay. So it's a fictional book, supposedly, but is it really?
No,
Is it
it's not.
really?
It
It's
might
not.
not be.
It may or may
It
not.
might not
We
be.
don't know. But it's such a great story. And here's the thing: I've read the book before. I've seen the map. Robert introduced me to the map
Yeah.
2 years ago. I had no, I had no knowledge of it. Ever since then, I've been in head to toe into Terra Infinita, digging and
You wouldn't
digging and
believe
digging
how
and
many
digging.
people messaged me that map. Like, and were like, dude, check this out. You love this stuff. Check this out. This is crazy. It looks like it could be real. Like, check this
And,
shit out. And
and
and I did.
Robert,
And I
And
was like,
some of
it's
it
not
sounds real.
and here's the
right.
thing: Robert was not a flat earther. He's not a flirter. I am. I've always been a
Yeah.
flirter. Am I extreme about it? No. I'm not extreme like a lot of flirters are. But if people want to talk to me about flat earth theory, I get all excited and then I get in full whole talk about it, and nobody can stop me for hours because I can go on hours and hours and hours about it. Just ask Robert. We got in a whole debate and argument about one time because
Yeah, we've argued it
he's
out.
on the line. Robert's on the lines of you're a hollow earther,
Yeah, I think it's more plausible that the Earth is hollow,
right? See, I do
but
believe
that
in
doesn't
hollow earth
mean there's not
theory.
extra land.
Right. I do believe in hollow earth theory, but at the same time, if there's no curvature, then explain that.
Explain caves.
That too. Now,
So, regardless if the Earth is round or flat, there's still caves. If there are
exactly.
caves, if there are caves, you most likely have an opening somewhere down there, and it gets a lot bigger. Okay,
Yeah.
and if that's a possibility, you don't know what the hell's down there. And you know,
That's true.
there's some Indian tribes who talk about the black hole sun, and there's been a couple rock bands, specifically, wasn't it like Soundgarden that did a black hole sun, won't you come? Yeah, don't you? Yeah, that song is about, so the black hole sun is like the sun's within the earth. It's inside of the earth. So like we have two suns apparently, and one resides inside of the earth. So that's always been a theory that there's a hollow earth with a whole nother land on the inside of us. But like if the earth is round or flat, I don't think it matters. If there's caves, the caves automatically show us that the hollow is completely and totally a possibility. Because that's literally just what it shows us. And the whole thing about the Earth just being the center of it just being magma. I mean, yeah, cool story, but eventually the Earth would combust.
Yeah.
I personally, like, I've looked at those statistics, and the Earth would definitely, like, it wouldn't last very long. All those volcanoes would go up and go crazy. Yeah, JD said she was just thinking about songs that mention people from other planets and stuff. The only other ones that I can think of is there's a couple of them, but I can't think of the names of them. I know David Bowie did a couple songs that dealt with like different planets and stuff. But no, like
And
supposedly, man, the black hole sun's in the middle of the earth.
yeah, that's I believe it. It's possible as well. But since we're getting towards the hour mark and we got a bunch of videos, should we go and get started on the video?
Faux show. Faux show. Crew wants his videos, so we're gonna start.
This was originally a reptilian-dominated planet. There was a disaster on Mars. The humanoid forms took refuge on the surface of the Earth, and these guys have been at war against each other for a long time. The reptilian humanoids, they're from the Earth's natural evolution. They're physical in form. Some of the more primitive ones live near the surface, and the other more intelligent and larger population groups are underground. There's other reptilian humanoids that also seem to be coming from another dimension.
Interdimensional reptoid beings. She said videos. Videos.
The Lyrans versus the Draco-Reptilian. This cosmic war took place 387 million years ago. Reptilians ambushed the Lyrans' planet called Planet Avion. They had an extreme blood loss and was more technologically advanced. Prior to this event, the Lyrans were peaceful and never dealt with war. Lyrans fought valiantly, but the Reptilians were too powerful. These beings were very carnivorous. Reptilians were actually consuming the Lyrans as a food source. Reptilians not only consume your flesh, but also your loosh. They begin to feed off the Lyrans' fear of them. Eventually, Tiamat was made aware of what took place with the Lyrans. Then Tiamat freed the Lyrans from the Draconians' bondage. The Lyrans left planet Avion. Lyrans learned from that situation since and became more technologically advanced.
See, and they call them Lyrans, but I've always heard that those beings were called felinoids. Like they were feline, like because they were alien. They were felinoids.
It reminds me of something off of Star Wars.
Right? Or even Skyrim with like the Khajiit. Yeah.
Khajiits, yeah.
The Earth might be bigger than we thought. For years, people have debated over the shape of the Earth, if it is round or flat. Now, this might just all be a conspiracy. But what if the Earth had more than just 7 continents? in Antarctica was just a giant ice wall that kept us from seeing the rest of the continents. What if once you made it past the ice wall, you'll find the 20 continents that are really being hidden from us? And what if there was a map that showed this? There are theories that these continents contain prehistoric animals, aliens, and advanced civilizations, and that the 7 continents that we are living in is actually a giant farm or business owned by a small handful of families that make up the filthy rich in the real world, or in the other continents that we don't know about.
How crazy would that be if we were literally just being farmed for another culture that lived in a different biodome? And not like necessarily being farmed to like eat, but being farmed for resources.
Like gold,
Somebody-
silver, minerals.
Just anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially metals and rare earth minerals. Jay says Revelation 6:13. Then I saw 3 spirits that looked like frogs. They came out of the mouth of a dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet.
Yep.
Those are your like a reptile reference in Revelations.
Mm-hmm.
Lands beyond the ice wall is extremely relevant today. We're going to get into it. Now, you're going to want to stick around for this because I'm going to retell the story for those that haven't heard it, but then I'm also going to add on my own theory to what all this mess is going on in the world right now, from the drones, the blinking lights, you name it. Let's go. So imagine for me, if you will, that you're William Morris and his crew on a small boat and you're exploring the edge of the ice wall, Antarctica. You see the break in the summer gate, okay? You don't even really know what it is yet, but you and your crew are scared and you don't want to go through it. But a current has other plans and immediately pulls you through to the other side. You are being approached now by a massive red ship on a scale much larger than what I'm showing you. And immediately you hear this horn. But soon this massive red ship realizes these people on this, what would be considered to them a tiny boat, are of no threat. Because they've seen this before. So imagine the boat is now being approached and the red ship crew members are disembarking to come down and have a chit chat. The captain comes down and says, "Hey, my name's Tolliver. What are you doing here?" Morris quickly explains, "Look, we had no intention of coming over here. What is going on?" So Tolliver then tells Morris, "We've seen your kind before, but not since the powdered wig days. Like this." Tolliver tells Morris that you are in the district of the Ancestral Republic. Morris then tells Tolliver, "Look, we don't want any trouble, okay? And these people already speak English, but you have to imagine that they learned how to speak English from the previous people that had come through. And English had to come from somewhere. We've been lied to our entire lives." Tolliver says, "Yes, Morris, I understand you don't want any trouble, but the people from where you came from, they do." He goes on to explain to him how all of this is nothing but barbarians. He then tells him that they've been trying to come over and liberate us forever, but all these people want is to act crazy and create chaos and trouble and slavery. Also, you have to remember that the Ancestral Republic lies just outside of our ice wall, but within our mountain ring. Tolliver then hands him a map of places that are safe to go within the 178 domed worlds under the massive biodome. He ends up going to the Ancestral Republic, falls in love with the chick, I'm supposing, has a baby, gets restless, and decides to come back through the ice wall. Tolliver had also told Morris, previous to all this, okay, they ended up becoming good friends from what I understand. So he tells him that every time we get too close to escaping, they do a great reset, taking us back to tribal eras. Now, I know that they said the aliens come out of the ocean or whatever. I think that they possibly had an underwater vehicle to go through a wormhole to get here from another land to try and liberate us, possibly. I hope. But this is getting kind of long, so I'll put my theory in part 2. Let me know what you think about that. Do you think that they did come back through? Because there's like 2 different places you can go through here. And that's causing all the flashing lights and everything else, especially if they had like cloaking stuff, devices, and they were coming through, it would cause a lot of interference with the electricity now, wouldn't it?
That's very interesting.
There.
And to think
Didn't
that,
they?
like, what,
I was
Julie?
just gonna say, in the news, didn't they have something about the reawakening or the something reset or
The Great Reset.
yeah or something like that?
Well, so resets have always happened. Like, for instance, like one of the biggest resets known in our history is Tartaria, and or Great Tartary. And like what people don't understand is that Tartaria probably was definitely real, and it was buildings and a entire race of people, probably multiple races of people that grew together and wanted a peaceful utopian like place with wonderful art everywhere and beautiful buildings, and they didn't really want their people to have to work all the time. They wanted people to be able to experience life and art and all of this other stuff. They wanted people to succeed and thrive. And they eventually got um, taken out. Like the entire group of people got taken out, and um, they started to rebuild. And by the time they were taken out, was around like Wild West times here. So like when we're told about the Wild West, when you look at buildings that were up in the Wild West, it makes absolutely no sense. We have giant buildings that have Roman columns and architecture out here in the States at the same time that supposedly we were chasing Indians that lived in teepees and we lived in tiny shacks that we built by hand out of logs. But right behind our log shack is a giant Romanesque building. How did that get there?
Right.
And they always talk about how these buildings mysteriously burn down. But tell me how a building that is completely made out of stone burns down. Make that one make sense. There's a lot of stuff that we're just not told about, and some of these buildings have been around forever. So when you look up like some of the state capitol buildings, they'll tell you that they have the person who built that building, but then they'll tell you that it was built in some absurd amount of time. Like a couple of the buildings that I've looked up at, a couple of them were built in a year and a half. It's not possible. You can't build a building like that in a year and a half. It takes
Yeah.
almost 2.5 to 6 years, depending on how good of a crew you have. If you have a really good construction crew, you might be able to get that building up in like a year and a half to 2 years, but you would have to like really bust ass on that building to get it up. And
Lot of
then
art.
Excuse me.
and then the
Oh,
stone masonry work on those buildings, that is not something they could do back then in the Wild West times, nor
no,
did they have
yeah.
the technology to do it. They want us to believe that all of that artwork and all of those buildings were done with chisel and hammer. Isn't that laughable? That's freaking laughable. You want me to believe that the some of the most amazing buildings built in our world during that time was built with a chisel and a hammer, but now in today's world we need an entire construction crew to to build one building.
Yeah. And that reminded me, not to get us off point, but I watched a video of a historian that talked with a Freemason guy that said that a lot of the work was drawn out by Freemasons, like the White House and that one old train station where the mural is on the ceiling. I
Uh-huh.
forgot the name of that one. But I
So
mean, it's
Masons have built quite a bit of stuff. Okay, apparently. Now, did they build it or did they just claim it? We're never going to know. It's
no.
it's hard to know. And with the White House has apparently burned down like 4 different times. So with that specific building, yes, I believe the Masons probably did build that building, like because they had to on like different times repetitively. I think one time the White House like arson was committed and the White House burned down. That was like back when, like in the 17 or 1800s, back when it was first
Yeah.
built. And then there was another time where like some electrical fire happened and burned down half the White House. And then another time a fire happened and burned down the entire place. So they've had to rebuild that building at least 3 times. At least 3 times. And I know that on the inside of that building, well, not on the inside, it's actually on the outside of the building. There's a specific brick that is there that's been there the entire time. It's from the first original White House, and it has the Masonic symbol on it. Yeah, the whole like triangle with the weird protractor thing or whatever. Their sigil, the Mason sigil or whatever it is. They
Right.
have that on the brick, and it says like the Freemasons built the White House, and it gives you like the date it went up and the how many times they had to rebuild it. But yes, the Freemasons have apparently built quite a bit of buildings. But the thing that I have a lot of like that I struggle with a lot when it comes to like Tartaria and some of these buildings, and then just Terra Infinita in general with the Masons. The Masons could have claimed any of that and just put their name on it.
Yeah.
We'll never know. We'll literally never know. Besides the buildings that we have proof of, like we have an actual person, we can track that person, and there's a legitimate timeline, and that timeline makes sense. Like, don't
And
tell me that some building was brought up in a year. Like, that doesn't happen, especially back then in those times.
and in the Terra Infinita, the Great Tartary will be talked about a little bit as well in some of the chapters.
Yep. Tartaria has been known around the world for a very long time. We're not the first people to talk about it.
And
Putin-
their Julie, just so you know, their reset was a mud flood.
Yep. So
Okay.
Putin in Russia released a map like 3 or 4 years ago. Like it was a map that most of the world hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
And this map was literally of Grand Tartary. And the map like was part of Russia and Asia at one point in time. And basically like he acknowledges the Great Tartary people. What happened to Crew?
I don't know.
I'm still here. I'm just doing
okay.
something real quick.
I gotcha.
Terra Infinita map, lands of Eris. And just as a reference point, these lands that we're talking about now are to the east. We've already covered most of the southern lands, but not to the west. But today we're on east. And as you can see, according to this, there is a break in their ice wall and they have 4 rings, 3 light sources. Now, this particular land is not able to be traversed by boat. This sea that it's connected to is part of helium. Yes, helium can be a liquid, but it's usually a gas here. And this is where most of it's coming from, the break in their ice wall, and then it comes out, and it is a helium ocean. This area right here inside the third ring is traversable by boat. It's regular water. These others are helium. Allegedly, for entertainment and educational purposes only. TikTok, don't get your panties in a wad. In order to get in, you would have to have an interstellar travel device, a wormhole, a portal, something of that nature just to get in. Because they do have a light source right here, it leads us to believe that this part then becomes a more gaseous area and that these lands move counterclockwise and they float. But then when you get to the inner parts, those are stationary lands and only the suns move. Now, Eris in the ancient Greek mythology was the goddess of conflict, discord, confusion, and primarily the one responsible for the Trojan War. So Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite were at a beauty contest. They'll have you believe it was a wedding, but I don't think it was. I think it was a beauty contest because that's what all of this got started over. Who was the prettiest? And Athena, being the goddess of intelligence, was infuriated. Because think about it, what's more beautiful, the outward appearance or the mind? And Hera, being the goddess of family and unity, was like, she didn't really care, right? But Aphrodite, on the other hand, she's the goddess of raw, sexual energy. So Eris gets this human named Paris. His parents were the king and queen of Troy, to decide who he would pick. They all make him different promises, but ultimately Aphrodite promises him something that he actually wants to possess, which is the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, which was Helen. Which didn't work out so well because she was already married to the king of the Spartans. Therefore, making Paris, by default even, the reason that the Trojan War got started. But back to the layout, I would guess that if you got in through here with an interstellar travel device or under ocean device that could actually pass through helium, you would have to go underneath to access the lands on the inside. And God only knows how deep that would be. I believe, and others do believe too as well, that this land here is populated by the ones who unalived in the Trojan War. Energy transference only. Basically, they got their new body and their new avatar. But if you want more of my analysis on the Terra Infinita map, like, share, follow, and comment.
So it's quite funny that we were talking about the Illuminatus trilogy yesterday, and we got into Discordianism, and who is their god?
Eris.
Eris. Eris, the god of chaos and the god of Discordianism. So that's where I just think that's a really funny thing we happen to stumble upon here, is the land of Eris, the land of Discordianism.
The Terra Infinita map, you are here, the known lands. But today, we're talking about the lands of Uranus. I know. As you can see with this map, let me move myself out of the way. There is only 2 suns, Only one place that is habitable, Titania, which literally means land of the Titans, aka lands of Uranus. And here is a break in their ice wall. NASA out here got people believing it looks like this for entertainment and educational purposes only, of course, TikTok. Much like the abyssal ocean, which is basically like helium. There we have the word hydrogen and helium. In Greek mythology, Uranus was the god of the sky and the heavens and the first ruler of the cosmos. Uranus was created by Gaia, the personification of Earth without assistance. Uranus became the husband of Gaia, and they had many children, including the Titans, Titania. Which, if you know how the legend goes, Uranus couldn't stand his children and hid them in Tartarus in a deep prison in the earth. There was like a major war that occurred, and that brings us to the land of Kronos, aka Prison Planet. Back to Uranus, as you can see, they have an ice wall much like Antarctica, and as I said, 2 light sources. What's interesting about this ocean moves constantly in a circle at a high speed rate. But as I said, there was a war. Because you can't go a day without war, can you? And much like this one, they have an ice ring, but they also have the mountain ring, okay? A gigantic mountain ring that has absolutely no breaks in it whatsoever. So Gaia didn't like the fact that her kids were going to be chained up under Tartarus and started an all-out war. NASA can't make up their mind. This is directly from NASA, their computer-generated image, just much like this one. And then you have the lands of Kronos connected to the land of Pan. In Greek mythology, Pan was the god of shepherds, hunters, and the wilderness, and also satyrs. So it's basically scary as hell. Don't go there. We don't want to go there, right? But regardless, they say this is the land of satyrs. So let's just say Kronos did escape and make it to the land of Pan, then he's got a whole nother set of problems on his hands. Which leads me to believe that's why the Titans placed him in that land and named it the Lands of Kronos. Because if you remember anything about Greek mythology and stuff like that, they cannot be unalived. And if you do make it there, there's a labyrinth. I mean, can you even imagine being a human being and visiting the land of Pan? You wind up in a labyrinth, and then this thing pops out and says, "Peekaboo, bitch." I believe I'd take my chances at the lands of Kronos.
Yeah, I don't want those things chasing me.
Me neither.
Yeah, I would rather go to the land of Kronos. And here's the thing: we might next season do Greek mythology because I'm a huge Greek buff. I love Greek mythology like it's nothing. So, if I had to choose, I'd choose the lands of Kronos because a labyrinth in Greek mythology is never a good sign.
Have I told you my reoccurring dream? I'm pretty
Oh,
sure
yeah.
I have told you my reoccurring
Yeah.
dream before. I'm gonna tell
Yeah,
everybody
you-
on stream who
Yep,
hasn't
you
heard
did.
my reoccurring dream. So
Go for it.
I have a reoccurring dream that continuously happens. It happens probably like once every 3 years now, but when I was younger, it would happen like literally once a month, maybe twice a month sometimes. And this dream is of me as a child, or when I was a child, it was me as a child. Now when I have the dream, it's me like I am now. But I'm stuck in a maze and I have a minotaur chasing me. Half bull, half human is chasing me. And I have to try to find a way out of this maze. Well, I back when I was younger, I didn't have a clue of what that meant. So I was talking to my mom about it. My mom was like, "Holy crap." And then she showed me this story that is called The Maze and the Minotaur, or the Minotaur and the Labyrinth, whatever. And it's a mythos thing from Greek mythology of a minotaur being inside of a labyrinth, and I don't know the whole story. You would have to pull it up, but it's really crazy because it's basically my dream, and it's me. I'm stuck in there with other people, and we're trying to escape the minotaur.
That reminds me of if I can get my brain to remember exactly the name, but there's a movie about a maze.
Oh, Maze Runner.
That's it.
That's a good
You know,
book.
you know what's funny? We're talking about domes and all this other stuff, but here's when they're the Maze Runner is kind of like similar to that in a way.
Yeah, so the Minotaur and the Labyrinth. King Minos commissioned an architect, Daedalus, to build a labyrinth to confine the Minotaur. In Greek mythology, the Minotaur was a half man, half bull monster imprisoned in a labyrinth in Crete. The Minotaur was the offspring of King Minos' wife, Phas- Phaspa, and a white bull sent by Poseidon for sacrifice. When Minos refused to sacrifice the bull, Poseidon caused Pasiphae to lust after it, resulting in the Minotaur's birth. The Minotaur story has inspired tons of works of art, including pottery, poetry, plays, operas, movies, and video games. But yeah, the Greek Minotaur monster was inside of a labyrinth and it would chase people. And this is what's even crazier because the labyrinth looks exactly like it does in my freaking dream. And when I tell you this, like, I have never in my life, I did not know about this story when I was 5 years old, which is when the dreams started happening. That's what
Right.
the labyrinth looks like. How did I explain it to you, crew?
Like
It's a
that.
giant maze.
Yeah. You
And that's what I'm
described it
stuck in,
just like that.
running around, avoiding a minotaur. So somebody please explain to me how a 5-year-old was having that dream and how I still have that dream and it reoccurs all the time. So much so that I remember it perfectly. Like, what's the symbolism behind that? Like, why is that happening for me?
Right. Okay, so
Oh, sorry, guys.
I can't believe I'm about to say this. Probably before you entered the simulation, this what we're in right now,
Yeah,
you basically in your past life before you entered the simulation was in a labyrinth.
right. Or was in the labyrinth.
In
Was
the
the
labyrinth.
the person that was in the labyrinth that was running from the minotaur?
Right.
But
But
I know.
that we don't know. But here's the thing: people have it might be it might be a type of dream you're having, recurring dream that God wants you to figure out. He's trying to tell you something and wants you to literally. It might be His way of telling you to find your way.
Right. No, I've thought about a
That's a
bunch of different
possibility.
reasons, but
Yeah.
it's like I was having that dream as a 5-year-old, so it was weird, and then it would happen like once or twice a month back then, and then the older I got, the dream would start to go away, and then whenever I think it would be gone, and I wasn't gonna think about it anymore, it would randomly happen. Like now, because I talked about it today, I guarantee you tonight when I go to sleep, I'm gonna have that dream.
in in my point of view on it, it might be God trying to get you to find your way.
Yeah,
So the Minotaur, for example, would be your demons
yeah,
trying to catch you. You're running from your demons, your past, and God's trying to get you to find the way out of your issues, your struggles, your problems that you've
right,
dealt with over the years, and he's saying, "Find your way out, and you'll be free."
right.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know, but that's how I see it.
No,
And
it's a
God
good
has always
it's
sent people dreams to figure out, like Joseph, for one.
yeah, no, it's a good way to look at it, and it's a good analysis of the dream. continuously tormented by a demon and I need to find my way. I mean, maybe. Maybe. We're actually so at the beginning of season 5, guys, before we finish these videos, at the beginning of season 5, we're doing the episode where Crew is going to interview me about my life and my childhood and everything, and you guys are going to learn quite a bit about me. It's going to be you're going to understand quite a bit about the reasons I am why I am, and why I act the way I act, and why I do things the way I do them. And some of you are going to be upset with some of the stuff that you're going to hear. It's going to be quite intense. I'm not going to lie. But I'm just letting you know, brace yourself, because that is happening on the first episode of season 5.
So, in other terms, we're going to have to put caution trigger warning.
Yeah. Well, I won't use
we had
any
to do that
words.
for my episode when we talked about my life story last season.
For sure. But anyways, let's get back to these videos real quick. I believe we're on this one now.
The Terra Infinita map, you are.
Could outer space actually mean the lands and the space outside of the ice wall that we're surrounded in? The Terra Infinita map. This is the known lands, right here. The lands of Neptune. The lands of Mars. And notice how we're always talking about going to Mars? Well, this is actually right under the main lands. The lands of Venus. The lands of Jupiter. So again, outer space is the space outside of the wall surrounding us. And what's more realistic? Aliens traveling from billions of miles away, or them traveling from right here, land of Mars, coming to us through the air or the oceans? Just saying.
Which is exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah,
We are the
I'm sorry.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was going to say, I actually read a book when I was in high school about a girl that went to space with her family. And now it seems that eventually it could happen.
Yeah, it
Where they
might.
could.
Well, Elon wants to be in Mars by 2030.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to, though.
I
Not
don't think
after
I would
when I
want to.
found out it's basically a zoo or a farm. Nope, I'm good.
Me
Right?
too.
No, thank you.
we are the first species.
Pay
on the
attention,
face of this
people.
earth
Pay
To
attention.
be aware of evolution, to be aware that we are affecting our own evolution by everything that we do. The babies we eat, the food we eat, the wars we fight. We are the
That woman just said the babies we eat.
Uh-huh. Well, you know, they're using baby parts to make some of our foods and beverages.
Yeah, that's what. So there's a harmful conspiracy theory for everyone right there. That
Yes.
hurts people for sure. But
Yes.
what I've heard is in the harmful conspiracy range that hurts people is that Pepsi uses stem cells from basically fetuses, and that's how they create their drink as good as it is. I don't know if that's true. That's all alleged. Obviously, it's a harmful conspiracy theory. And then I've also heard that Bill Gates wants us all to transfer to lab grown meat, and the easiest way to create that kind of meat is with DNA, and what more DNA do they have than all the DNA of everybody already that they have? And what's to say that they wouldn't 3D print human meat for consumption?
And that
I
lady
wouldn't put it
that we
past them.
saw in that video supposedly was a Draconin.
Yeah, for sure. The babies we eat. Oh my goodness, that's insane. Even like that's a Floridian slip.
I
Maybe,
pulled
maybe
so
she
many
meant baby
things.
carrots. That's positive, JD.
Beings from far beyond the ice wall down there, or what is down? What kind of gun do you need us to take? He said, an M16. And I said, why would we want to take an M16 down there? He said, you find out when you get there. I said, you can't give us any more information than that? He said, I don't know. I really don't know. And I felt that he was sincere there, that he didn't know. I said, well, who would we find out? Who would we talk to? So he said, well, the chief of security police. So I went to the chief of security police, who was at the time a major, and I asked the major, I said, we want to go down to Urania. He said, I need to send some troops down there with you. I said, why? What's going on down there? He said, we really don't know. I said, you want to tell me in straight words what you're talking about? He said, he looked around the room. He said, let's go into the other room. So we went in the back room. It was like a supply room. He sat down, and he looked down on the floor, and he kind of looked around. He said, there's aliens living in that mountain. I said, extraterrestrial aliens? Yep. I said, that's why the mountain opens. Shakes his head. I said, so what are we going to find when we go down there? He said, we only went down there once, and we never went back. So I said, you went down there, you climbed the mountain? He said, no. There's a tunnel. The old uranium mine is there, and there's a tunnel that leads the old mine shaft. We had built that, the test site built that for a testing area. They were going to test lasers in it. And when they got a certain point into the mountain, about a mile in, they realized there were visitors there. And this is what he's telling us. So we got out of there. So I said, the United States Air Force, the United States Army is pulling out of a place that you saying? Did you actually see him? He said, no, I never saw him. So I said, I want to go down there. So I got a couple agents, and there was a security detail of 12 to 15 of them, I believe, security police. And they were armed. I didn't take an M16. We didn't take it. We had them. But I was trained in them, but I didn't take them. I had my handgun.
Plus, you had the whole crew.
Yeah, plus those guys are going to protect us. At least I hope. So we went down there. We walked in. I mean, we went in, and they had erected a huge vault door because of what they found inside. And there was combination locks and so forth. And it took some time for it to get the big vault door open. And the security guys go, there it is. I said, well, you guys going in with us? And they kind of looked at each other. It was a lieutenant that was a leader of them. If you insist. I said, have you been here before? He said, yeah. I said, have you seen anything?
Leaving us on a cliffhanger.
Right? Like, I wish we had the last bit of that. They always be doing that on TikTok, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Terra Infinita map, Lands of Angels. I'm also going to be covering the next land up from there, which is Aldebaran A and Aldebaran B. This video is for entertainment purposes only. TikTok, please don't get your panties in a wad. So the Lands of Angels is actually connected by a ginormous, mountainous, icy ring to the Lands of Jupiter. And as you see, they have a lush ring. Okay? These are more like icebergs. It does have two suns. And as the name suggests, Lands of Uriel, they probably still reside there today. This is Uriel. But what was he known for? Uriel is an archangel of the utmost wisdom who gave people alchemical knowledge. He is also called the Archangel of Salvation in Judeo-Christian books. One can obtain intellectual insight, practical solutions, and creative abilities by addressing him through prayer. Also, I want to tell you that it's located to the left of the lands of Mars, which then takes us to Aldebaran A and Aldebaran B. And it says here that Aldebaranians are a sapient alien species from the Aldebaran system, which live on a planet with 6 moons. The name they use for themselves in their own language can be roughly translated as triops, referring to their 3 eyes, which I believe is the pineal gland. This is where your life is going to be located. We don't know very much right now about Aldebaran B, which then brings us to the land of Osiris. I'll cover it too. Again, it goes back to Egyptian mythology. It is located right from our known lands, right up above it, so you can access it through here, through Geminia. And as you see, you have the Anubis Islands and the land of Amen. He would weigh the soul against the weight of a feather to see who got into the afterlife, the good part anyway. So my assumption would be that because Amen technically means so be it, that after you unalive, you would go here and then cross through, okay, with Anubis, whether you were good or not, and then you could reach this area. So again, we see this several times on this map, somewhere that you would need to be unalive or basically in a cryo state. And maybe that's because to get there, it would take so long. Because we have to think about this like a movie, like basically like outer space. And to get there would take an incredible amount of time. You would be old by the time you got there. So that makes sense. You would need to be suspended in cryostasis. And then we have the island of Unalive and Mermaid Lands, which if you take it at face value, literally you would have mermaids there. And this is probably where they would take their unalive. It would be kind of like a burial zone. But do you remember how when we were talking about the lands of Neptune and there being underwater cities, these mermaids can actually reside on land full time if necessary. See the difference? These would be the oceans surrounding it, but this would be the underground cities. Like this. So that would be my guess about the mermaids' lands. But if you like my breakdowns on the Terra Infinita map, follow, like, share, comment for more.
Yeah, she seems to know what she's talking about when it comes to her explaining some of the maps and some of the things. I didn't even know there was lands of mermaids.
Me either.
I didn't either.
That's an interesting one. those are the supposed races that live on every one of those lands.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bear people.
Yep. And lands of
Wow.
Hydra.
Yeah, the hydras are cool.
You're saying the world's bigger than we know, that they changed how we think. Richard Constantine.
He knew that with this model, reinforced by working geometrical logic, he could deceive the minds of millions into believing that this small section of the world was the entirety of a world in and of itself.
Even if that were true, how the hell would they be able to sell such a lie?
Thought you'd never ask. See, Richard was maniacal. His family loved his idea of entrapping the soon-to-be population, but they too asked him the obvious question, how can we be sure they'll obey? At which point, with an emotionless expression, Richard said to them, give me absolute control over what's taught to the minds within these walls, and they will look to the heavens before they consider what's behind the ice.
Good God.
See, Richard was the godfather of psychological manipulation. Spent the following years creating the blueprint for a new reality, our reality. The great curriculum of confinement, or what we know as geography, Newton's laws of physics, etc. A structured narrative of logical principles that would be taught to every generation within the wall. But he knew that wasn't enough. He knew how the subconscious mind worked as well, so he created sigils of circularity, symbols of a sphere, globes, circular maps, even our circular language of time itself, were embedded in every cultural artifact. He knew not all humans were brainiacs. Some were more spiritual, mythically intuitive. So he created, naturally, deterring layers of awareness through monstrous mythological beasts that scoured the oceanic abyss, instilling innate fear into the naive early generations.
Oh, come on. I mean, we don't believe that type of stuff.
Your ancestors sure did. And I don't know about you, but I'm not taking a boat into the middle of the Pacific anytime soon.
Fair enough.
But Richard's greatest deception, the cosmic paradox. He introduced the concept of an endless void, a vacuum of dark space beyond this globe. You see, when he told his family he'd have us looking to the heavens instead of beyond the ice wall, he was being literal. Think about it. When we converse, when we hypothesize of what's beyond our observable reality, the conversation pivots into outer space. You'd never for a second consider there's more to the world beneath your feet.
What are you getting at?
Richard was a genius. His theories worked. He created geometrically accurate models of a hypothetical universe. It's just not ours. I'm going to go ahead and say this is a joke for entertainment purposes only.
That's interesting.
Right.
That's a story I hadn't heard.
Me neither. It makes you wonder about what you actually learned about in school.
Oh yeah, no, I've always wondered that though, like what they actually taught us, if it's real, if it's true, how they could skew certain things to benefit. Like, for instance, I feel like school just it gets you ready for the military. It doesn't get you ready for college. It gets you ready for the military. They want you to sit down, shut up, and follow orders.
Yeah.
And they want you to do good with following orders. Some people can say that that's military tactics, and other people can say that that's actually prison tactics. Hold up a bunch of kids inside of a classroom that has no windows, make them sit down all day and read books and study, and if they don't do it correctly, you send them to the principal's office and they get reprimanded. Well, that's kind of like what happens in prison, but instead of a principal, you have a warden.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you think about it, how close schools are to prisons.
Yep.
JD says, maybe this was already said, but this stuff seems to line up with Star Wars movies. Fallen stars are said to be fallen angels. Wars of the Fallen Angels, lands being the different angel lands.
Valid point.
Yeah, for sure.
taken an unexpected turn. The astronauts doing the spacewalks will now be wearing snorkels after the last astronaut who performed a spacewalk nearly drowned when his helmet filled with water. Let's get to.
But just my gut inside me said, that's my dive buddy, and I should be with my dive buddy. That's my dive buddy, and I should be with my dive buddy.
But the last spacewalk ended with Italian astronaut Luca Parmitano nearly drowning in his helmet after it started filling with water.
Water is in his eyes now, and it seems to be increasing.
Fellow astronauts quickly pulled him back into the station. When they did, water poured from the helmet.
And just out of the airlock right now, and I'll get in config to get the waist tethers all hooked up, the safety tethers, I should say. Okay.
Dave Williams beginning the third spacewalk of his career.
We saw some droplets coming out, and I'm looking at you from camera Charlie, and I saw them go.
So the astronaut got water in its helmet? The astronaut got water in its helmet. There's water in outer space? Okay, so I pulled out my book about the ice walls and everything. I'm going to tell you the story because the only thing that explains what they just said is the Terra Infinita story. So when I used to do content on, like, you know, Terra Infinita, flat earth theory, ice wall theory, and I'd get those videos taken down. Why was that? If outer space is made of water, like, was this a guff? Was this a joke? Was this satire? Is prank on humanity? They're telling us. Because I didn't want to sound like a kook, but you know, so I've been putting that content under sci-fi fiction, but sounds to me like you guys are talking about the custodians and the ice walls and, yeah. What? Huh. Guess we ought to start doing content on this just to stay up with the times, right? Basically, this story is like this. We live in the known lands. And what is this Great Dome? The Great Dome, also called the end of the known lands, is that which covers and encloses in some way the other known worlds. This is the other book, and it's called The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. And it's a first account story by the navigator, Sir William Morris. The story I'm about to tell you is probably going to change your view, how you see the world. And I know people will find it incredible to believe, but after that the astronaut's helmet was full of water, I can only explain it with something like this. Morris was in the Continental Navy in the Revolutionary War, and he tells this story how on the peaceful night of the surrender in Saratoga, they were sailing through the northern Atlantic Ocean, and they were headed for Charleston Harbor. So you had all of these Navy guys that were telling their stories, anecdotes, things like that, under the moon on their way back home. That's how they were all drinking whiskey and just having a grand old time, relaxing. The war was over. And all of a sudden, they start talking about James Cook's voyage, and he was obsessed with crossing the Antarctic, or to better say, crossing the Antarctic Circle. Morris wasn't really interested in this conversation the sailors were having, but when a prominent figure started talking about knowing about it, that's when it got his attention. It was Captain Butler, and he was very respected. He joined this conversation and started telling the other men that it was possible to cross the Antarctic Circle, and he knew how, because there was an opening somewhere in the polar circle. He said that there was an entrance, and he knew where it was. He goes on to say that this passage connects us to other worlds. And he said this seriously, without hesitation. It wasn't a joke. If you'd like to know more about the navigator who crossed the ice walls and what's going on, follow for more.
Yeah. So, like, a lot of people read this and they start believing there's a possibility that it's true because it makes too much sense.
It does.
And I've actually heard this. I've actually heard the story about the astronaut who got water in his helmet. That's true. That's 120% true. There was a British astronaut that went on a spacewalk whose helmet cracked and it filled up with water. but we never talked about it again. Because nobody wanted to go back to the fact that, oh, space has water in it. Oh, that's weird. Interesting.
Helen Morris was born in the lands behind the ice walls, a place most of us cannot even imagine. Her father, William Morris, was a daring Navy navigator who crossed the ice walls into uncharted lands and uncovered truths that humanity was never meant to know. Now, Helen steps forward to reveal the secrets her father died to protect. The existence of extraterrestrial civilizations, humanity's lost history before the last reset, and the custodians, the shadowy rulers who have kept humanity in the dark for centuries. At 9:15 a.m., Helen Morris sat in a small grey room, the air heavy with stillness. The room was in the walled lands, a place where humanity had once thrived, but now felt like a shadow of its former self. Helen had returned to the lands of her ancestors, where the weight of history pressed down on her. Her father, William Morris, had always believed in freedom for these lands, and Helen was determined to continue his mission. In the walled lands, life was rigid and controlled. This cannot be called life, she thought. The land was filled with people who had been manipulated into defending a version of history that wasn't their own. They had forgotten the sacrifices made by those who came before them, people like her father, who had fought to reveal the truth. Helen's father had died trying to expose the custodians, a hidden force that manipulated these lands and buried the true history of humanity. They ruled through division, drawing lines between people based on colors, beliefs, and borders. These divisions had caused countless wars and immeasurable suffering. The only just cause is freedom, her father had often said, and Helen carried those words with her as a guiding light. The land itself was harsh, filled with dangers that made survival difficult, yet Helen couldn't abandon it. The custodians, also called the Watchers or the Corrupt Brotherhood, are a parasitic force that has exerted its influence since the dawn of humanity. Helen learned much about their control through her father's work and the teachings of Shiki, a giant human who revealed hidden knowledge about the world. This knowledge spoke of other civilizations and the true history of Terra Infinita, lands beyond the known world, hidden behind walls of ice. Helen believed her work was urgent. The custodians had exploited humanity's weaknesses for centuries, using division, media manipulation, and fear to maintain their control. Living this life seems normal, Helen noted, but it's a life built on lies. She urged people to question everything they had been taught, to embrace empathy and unity, and to resist the conditioning that had numbed them into complacency. Returning to the lands her father had left during wartime, Helen found them unchanged, still trapped under the custodians' grip. Wars continued, not for freedom, but to perpetuate the division and control the custodians thrived on. Her father's words echoed in her mind. True security cannot come from governments, leaders, or parties. It's up to us to break free from those who pull the strings from the shadows. The Great Dome is a colossal, mysterious structure that surrounds and encloses 178 worlds, known as circle environments. Each of these worlds is unique, with its own climates, civilizations, and sometimes smaller domes within them. It is said to be the boundary of the known universe, and for centuries, it has been a source of both fascination and fear. Few have seen the Great Dome up close, and those who have attempted to cross it have met with failure. Legends speak of early explorers who tried to reach the other side, only to find the dome impenetrable. Some even claim that the dome can be touched, though no one truly knows its nature. These attempts and their failures have left a lingering fear, particularly among the colonizing civilizations that dominate these worlds. For them, The dome is more than a boundary. It is a barrier protecting their power. The thought of an external force breaking through and disrupting their control keeps them awake at night. Within the dome, travel between the worlds is a challenge. Smaller domes within the circle environments are also difficult to penetrate. Over time, advanced technology was developed to navigate these barriers, but crossing by air remains almost impossible. The safest method has always been through water, where natural passages sometimes open, connecting the inner and outer worlds like fleeting doorways. Portals have enabled some exploration but have also caused chaos. Many portals are unstable, and travelers have vanished after stepping through them. Some believe these people were transported to unknown places, while others think they were destroyed in the process. Despite these risks, efforts to create new portals continue. Independent lands also exist between the circle environments. These neutral zones were once used by early explorers as resting points during long journeys. They are said to connect the worlds, making exploration and escape possible. Many believe that the worlds within the Great Dome were created to be studied, to inspire a drive for freedom, and to eventually lead explorers to the celestial lands, an even greater mystery that lies beyond the dome. The Great Dome looms over these worlds, a constant reminder of their confinement and their potential. It holds secrets, challenges, and perhaps a path to freedom. But crossing it comes at a price few are willing to pay. The custodians are a parasitic race driven by conquest and exploitation. Their technology revolves around attack and defense, and their relentless focus on colonizing and exploiting other lands and the beings they find there has made them a dominant force within the Great Dome. Their origins remain shrouded in mystery, but some theories suggest they are the product of a desperate fusion between their race and another, one that might have come from beyond the dome itself. This merger, it is said, created the formidable beings now known as the custodians. The custodians were among the first to venture beyond their own world, using their advanced technology to expand their reach. They moved from one circle environment to another, overwhelming the fledgling civilizations they encountered. Their power was unmatched, and their influence spread quickly as they explored the edges of the known worlds. However, their dominance has not gone unchallenged. The custodians have been defeated twice in recorded history, each time by a different race.
That's very interesting. We're gonna have to pick up. We're gonna have to pick up on this in another episode because it's already time for us to go. But JD said the astronaut getting water in the helmet happened 2 years ago, or happened twice 2 years ago. CNN posted it on their YouTube page and referenced it previous time it happened. Yeah, it's freaking weird. Like that shouldn't happen. But anyways, we'll talk more about this on the next episode. Much love, guys. I hope you had fun watching us tonight. If you did, please like the stream, share it, and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Besides that, we hope y'all had a wonderful time and enjoyed this as much as we did. Much love from the Robert and Crew Show. Peace.
If you don't like boring news but still crave the truth, then dive into The Robert and Crew Show. From mind-bending conspiracy theories to wild weather phenomena, we've got it all. Ever wondered what's really happening in your hometown, or what secrets the global news isn't telling you? We dig deep into the core of every story, unraveling the mysteries one podcast at a time. Join Robert and the crew as we navigate this vibrant, ever-changing cyberpunk landscape, bringing you interviews with the most intriguing minds out there. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, a news junkie or a weather enthusiast, there's something here for you. So strap in, listeners, because we're about to take you on a ride through the neon-lit alleys of truth and intrigue. This is the Robert and Crew Show, where the future meets the fantastic.